All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Thursday, August 4th. So almost the end of the week. We've got one big economics report out tomorrow. That is the jobs report. So we'll see if that kind of causes any volatility for tomorrow. A lot of these economic reports, they have really not been causing any major volatility to the downside recently. So let me just zoom this in a bit. As we've been seeing, some reports that have been coming a little bit better than expected. So, today, for example, initial jobless claims, even though we're hearing about more layoffs, perhaps it takes a little bit more time to wash through. Probably for tomorrow's report, the change in non-farm payrolls, they're looking for 250, and the private payrolls 230. But again, we hear, I think Walmart said that they're laying off some executives and so forth. But a lot of these folks are probably going to get some type of packages, like retirement packages or like a severance package. So it may take a while before that really kind of washes through the system. But certainly you hear more about more layoffs here and there, depending on the business and what their scope is and what they do. So that's for tomorrow. Let's move on to today's price action. Choppy day overall. And by the way, risk disclaimer is in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only. Let me see if I can turn on in this video. Yeah, let's see if I can turn on. Let's see if I can turn on the camera. See if you guys like that. Please give me a comment or two if you want to see the video on a day-to-day basis. So we'll try it. We'll see what type of response I get. But so let's see. So for the averages finished, the Q squeaked out a gain there at the end of the day. I wanted to just go over a couple of the index charts, and then I'll talk about just a commodity or two, and then we'll talk about just a couple single names. A lot of earnings reports. Once again, I'm at the point of earnings saturation. Just a lot of reports that came out yesterday, today. It takes a few days to kind of to find which names that really had good results. For me, for the most part of what I do play earnings here and there, but for the most part, what I'm looking to do is find the ones that really crushed earnings, right? Because they could be the next setups and trades for the next quarter, right? I talk about that a lot. I probably repeat myself with that, but because I say that often. But I do compile a earnings watch list every quarter. And, depending on how the quarter looks, right, that could end up being where a lot of the trade setups are coming from. So NASDAQ, a couple of things that I've been talking about. I put out a pre-market, commentary as well as we do a pre-market video starting like right around 9:10 in the morning and into the open. So if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, just to kind of fill you in on what we do on a daily basis, but I always give my viewpoint on what I think for the day, strategy for the day. And I thought today was going to be one of those wait and see days. We've been moving so nicely to the upside, grinding up, staying above the 5-period moving average, because I don't have a lot for my indicator, right, which is the market webs indicator, which uses volume at price. I don't really have a lot in here. It's we're kind of in a little bit of a dead zone. I don't want to say dead zone, that's the wrong term, but I just don't have a lot between this version point of control and the top of value. So I use the moving averages to help me to see what the short-term trend is a lot of the times. And we're staying above this 5-period moving average, right? So even though it was a choppy day, right, it's one of those situations, and this is the 1-hour chart, we are staying for now above this version point of control, the last takeout, right? And we also hopped over the 5-minute value area at the end of the day too. So, there is this, in terms of options, I know some people look at whether or not the where it's positive gamma or negative gamma. Sometimes that really can help dictate moves. just in the options, right? The options are just one piece of the puzzle, but we have flipped. I think last week we flipped to positive gamma, and it does feel like the little dips are being bought. Whereas you go back a couple months ago, and it just felt like the sellers were in control. A lot of the days in the past, going back to back June and prior to that. Right. But it does look like it feels like something has changed a little bit in the short term. Again, it doesn't mean that we can't get any volatility. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be something in the news that comes out, but it just feels like there's a little bit of a different change in tone. And, even like this, where it was a very choppy day, we went down on the open, we still managed to eke out a gain there in the NASDAQ. So just wanted to mention that. Similarly, in the S&P, just a choppy day, right? And one of the things that I said this morning was I wanted to see how some of these names that really rallied pretty decently into their earnings report, the Wayfair, the Crocs, there's like 3 or 4 other names too, but for some reason it's been a long day. It's been a long week, so I can't think of them all. But we saw a Yeti was another one too, right? That rallied in. Shake Shack was another one too, but they didn't deliver in their earnings reports. So you're going to see that. You're going to see some things where there's going to be short covering, right? And I think that has a lot to do with some of the positioning that we've been talking about in these videos, where there's just heavy, there's heavy positioning to the downside, and there's been a lot of short covering, which has been fueling the fire to the upside as well. So just interesting to see, some of that play out. Like, look at what a Wayfair did today. Actually not down that poorly, down 2.3%, but a Crocs gave back. I was actually playing Crocs at the end of the day. Their initial move was up, but again, look at the run into the earnings report. So again, just something to monitor. And I said that I wanted to be, watching a little bit more than trading, but I did have a couple of alerts go off, and I traded a couple of things. Unfortunately, the momentum just wasn't there. One of the things that I traded today was Netflix. This was something that we talked about right at the end of the day. TTG member brought this name to my attention yesterday, right? Because it's been slowly kind of grinding here, and it's above value for the month, right? And then so it's above value on multiple time frames. It just didn't really have the momentum with it. It whipped back and forth today, but that'll be a name that I'm watching tomorrow. Just because it didn't have the momentum today doesn't mean that it's a done trade. But again, it'll be a short-term trade for me because the name is in a downtrend. So I mentioned it would be a day trade, and it was a day trade. Where there was continued strength, I thought was interesting, was Amazon again today. I think Amazon can make it up to the 200-day moving average, right? But we talked about this yesterday. Nice little cup out of here. I was talking about this in the pre-market session too, that sometimes you don't see that much on the daily chart that may be interesting, right? But sometimes you see a little bit of a different pattern, right, on the 1 hour. So, sideways basically after earnings, and then it started to kind of lean to the upside in the middle of the day yesterday, and it has kept going. And I don't really see anything up here, which is good. I think until we get to the 200-day moving average on the daily. So that was one. I thought it was very impressive, the move in AMD today. A lot of call buying in AMT, momentum call buying, and that name, did a hell of a move after, a very muted earnings reaction the day before, but up 6%. All right. One name, as I'm looking at some of the names, and I report all the names that report after hours. I don't tweet them all out. Sometimes I will tweet a couple things out, but a couple names that were interesting is if I can find it in here. Team had good numbers, right? This was another one that's been looking pretty good, but sometimes the earnings report can change the direction. But trading up to 252 after hours. Also, Also, Net, I think, had one of the biggest earnings reactions. They're up to 72 here in the after hours. So again, like, we went over this earlier in the week about how many of these names that have been basing and starting to turn higher. Well, this is going to get you up to 72 and probably somewhere filling this this last earnings gap, which is around 77. And I think that will also, notice again, no version point of controls to all the way up there. So to about 81. So maybe this thing can run up a little bit more, but very nice. And again, we'll see if it can maintain the gains through the earnings call. All right. A couple other names too. Another name that I mentioned, I think on Twitter yesterday. Look at this Duolingo. So this is more of like a very specialty company, but it's an interesting company, right? I heard that a lot of people like their services to help learn languages. So again, very, very niche type company, but trading at 108 there after hours. Right? So pretty tremendous there. So here's my trade blotter. Again, I show this just about every day. I did a little bit of over trading today. And I make mistakes just like everybody else, but I clearly shouldn't have traded this much today because I thought today was going to be a choppy day. Remember, if you talk about what you think is going to happen for the day, make sure that you adhere to that, right? Sometimes we get a little bit fooled by some of the action that we're seeing on the tape. Sometimes the option activity too will kind of point us in a direction, but a couple names I just wanted to go over. This AXNX, AX, and I'm still having problems with this symbol, but this thing closed on the highs. I don't think they priced the secondary yet, but look at the touch off this thing sank because they announced the secondary offering, but this thing held right where it needed to, top of value for the week, 65. I did buy this yesterday, right? And this worked out pretty nice. I substituted out of my LNTH position because I didn't want the earnings risk. And, this is one I'll be watching, right? It's a little bit weak here, so it may take a little bit of time, but their numbers were good, but, maybe a little bit overcrowded, right? A lot of people like myself talking about this one a lot, right? So, so we'll watch what it does from here. All right. And another trade that I had mentioned the last couple of days, I actually got out of this in the morning and I put it back on. All right. Sometimes I do that. All right. Sometimes, if I get this nice move on the open, right, and it sinks a little bit, right, and it comes back, I think this looks pretty good, right? I want to stick with a name that I think can continue to rally now that it's, coming out of this coil. Right. Another name too that looks interesting to me, which was also mentioned in our trading room today, was DLO. Right. It's got a new, it's a newer company, so it just has a very new 200-day moving average. But maybe this thing can run up to about 32.25, which is a VPOC right above here. All right. And then lastly, looking back at my spreadsheet, just to go over a couple other things, but I mean, impressive move by biotech. We keep hearing about deals in biotech, and that's fueling the move as well. Kind of a false breakdown here. It looked like just the other day, it looked like this was starting to kind of lose the range and head back to the downside. And you had a nice, we could call that a kick save, right? And bullish engulfing here, gapped up yesterday, and then another deal being announced today. So let's see what it does in here, right? So this was my upside target, and we did take that out, so that's at 88, and we'll see if this can continue past that red line. Again, the version point of control where a lot of volume occurred previously, where we have not revisited, right? And this is where the majority of volume occurred in this period. Right, so we've come back and we've revisited that and tagged that quite nicely. What else? I wanted to mention one or two other quick things here. The home builders were up again today, and then again the oil stocks. right? Cyber names too, right? You know, just a shame this this cyber group just doesn't seem to be one that wants to participate right now, and just caused a lot of pain in this group. So again, not everything positive, right? There are things on this tape that, you know, aren't looking great. And this is one of them. I did like how CrowdStrike came back. You know, whenever a whole group, you know, when there's a bad earnings report in a group and they all get hit, it's interesting to see which ones come back. I thought Crowd was pretty interesting. It actually got back above that 188.50, which is the top of value for the August value area. So you know, it's holding its own. It hasn't had huge momentum to the upside, but it's just been kind of doing its thing, steadily climbing higher, right? And you know, you could draw basically a nice trend here, or channel, that this thing has been in. And then lastly, the energy stocks, right? Look at what crude is doing. We talked about how yesterday that it was the first decisive break of the 200-day moving average since December for crude futures. And that's continuing to the downside. So down another 3%, and it's taking energy stocks with it. XOP, I was long some Oxy, and this was a great heads up by a trader in our trading room, who was also long Oxy with me, and he said, you know what, this doesn't look very good at the end of the day. And I said I agree, and I actually added to the position, because I held a small position going into earnings. I took the remainder of my position off. Right, so if you go Oxy, and if you pull up trades, right, I actually added to this position. You know, I took off 90% of the position ahead of earnings because I don't want that risk, right? And then I added to it late in the day yesterday, and then at the end of the day, I decided to take it off at 61.30, and the thing's all the way down at 57. So why am I talking about this? Because it ended up being a losing trade, you know, from where I added to it yesterday. But so why am I talking about this? Right? Because it's really important to go over not just your winners, but your losers, right? You know, a lot of people, they send out videos or tweets and so forth, and they're only talking about the winners. I've talked about this a couple times, maybe more than that, a couple times this year, that your losers will define this year, right? How you're managing names and trades that don't go well. Believe it or not, everybody has losing trades, and how you manage them. You know, in this particular year where the indices are still in a downtrend, how you manage those trades that don't go well, I think will still define your year. All right, guys. So it's good to go over them and how you're managing them. All right. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow.